All right, everybody, welcome back to the Crypto 101 podcast. We're joined by an expert today in the blockchain gaming space, Kieran Warwick, who's the co-founder of Alluvium. Welcome to the Crypto 101 podcast.
Thanks, Bryce. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we're excited. We're doubly excited that you made it. You could have bailed for sure. You're a little under the weather, so we appreciate your time, and we'll keep it to the point.
No worries. All good.
Aaron, you're hanging in there?
I am, and I'm really excited for this conversation today because I have a confession to make. I have an addiction. It started in the bear market as I tried to cope with watching all these assets become devalued. The gateway was Legos, which quickly dissolved into games. And I began dumping the small fortune I made in the last bull market into this game that is it's a mobile game. It's basically centered around the Naruto universe. Yet all the money that I've poured into this game, I can't use these items or the ninjas or anything else to earn a yield back for me. And I've been saying we need a marketplace. We need to put these things on chain. Come on, devs, like get your head out of your ass. Like, where's the future in this gaming ecosystem for the money I've invested in it if it's not on chain? And it's become increasingly more frustrating to play than it is fun because it's so far behind the time. So I want to educate myself on Alluvium and blockchain gaming so I can tell the developers of this game exactly what they need to do to keep me as a customer.
And just to clarify, the game that you just described was not Alluvium.
No.
What's that game?
We're going to learn about Alluvium and what these guys should be doing. And Alluvium's going to serve as the shining example for blockchain gaming.
Love it. Well, yeah. I mean, how is blockchain gaming different than any other kind of gaming, like what Pizza Mind's talking about? Why is he so frustrated?
So typically what happens in a Web 2 game is two things. You either do a combination or you do one or the other. And that is you pour your time and effort into a game, sometimes thousands and thousands of hours, or you pour thousands and thousands of dollars, which is what it sounds like Pizza Mind has done. So
it is definitely both.
And what you're frustrated at is the fact that you believe that because you have bought those assets with your hard-earned money, and or you've earned those assets through gameplay, skillful, competitive, grinding, whatever the style might be, you've put in your time. Now, time is a very valuable resource. So it's not a crazy concept to think you should be able to then do something with those assets, right? Now, you mentioned a marketplace, and typically in these mainstream games, they're gated marketplaces, which means they're an in-game currency that you cannot take out of the game. So they'll allow you to input, but they won't allow you to extract. And that is the fundamental difference between a Web 2 and a Web 3 game, is we will give you verifiable ownership over almost every single asset that we have in game. And you can do with that what you please. You can trade it. You can hold on to it because you think it might appreciate in value. You can sell it. You can do whatever you want as you please, because we believe that we need to remove that frustration from gamers, because it's not just you. There's millions of gamers out there that feel exact same. And that's the beauty of what blockchain games bring.
That's awesome. I was just saying that's so exciting. Whether these Web 2 developers listen or not, tell us about Alluvium and what that game is about. Maybe we'll all just head over there.
Well, let's hope so. That's the whole idea. So what we're doing is we're taking it one step further. the other additional feature of blockchains is the ability for those assets to not just be owned by the end user, the gamer, but for them to also be interoperable. So what that means is you can take one asset in our universe and you can bring it into another game and then another game and so forth as we build out this universe, right? So not just a situation where you might be playing, let's call it something in Mario, right? And you work your way all the way up. You've got all the items, all of that kind of stuff. And then you want to go bring that into Super Smash Brothers, which is inside the same franchise. They don't let you do that. Whereas inside of Alluvium, you'll be able to build up your assets that you collect. You'll be able to get items like weapons and armor and all of these really cool sorts of things. And instead of it just sitting there and dying when you finish playing or whatever, you can then take that into our next game. And so we've got 3 games inside of this Alluvium universe that we're building right now. All 3 are in either alpha or beta stage. So that means that, privately people are playing, they're giving us feedback. The first one is Alluvium Zero, which is a mobile game, similar to like SimCity, if you ever played that back in the day. And so your job there is to essentially build out your industrial complex. And what you're trying to do is extract as much fuel and resources out of your land from building out that complex. Now, what you do with that fuel is you take that into the overworld. Now, the overworld is our second game, and that's where it's more Pokemon-like, where you've got 200 plus creatures that are roaming around, 7 stunning, beautiful regions that we've created, and your job is to go around and capture these creatures. And then our third game is Arena, where you go and battle these different creatures using your ranger. And that's where it gets super strategic, competitive. There's an esports element to that. And so the entire universe is cohesive and seamlessly connected.
Love it. And it's one of those things where people could play, they could earn. And so it's like if people are already spending their time gaming, this is kind of now a new template, if you will, or a new business model. Like people could just play games and earn. And so when I was a kid, I would play RuneScape all the time. And my dad would kind of jokingly call it ruin your lifescape because it's like I would just spend time doing that and, not doing my homework or whatever. But now kids are actually earning money from it. And I think it's going to be a big wave of the future. Do you kind of see, like, from a consumer standpoint, like I know Axie Infinity, people in the Philippines were able to like earn income during the pandemic and stuff, but is it a pipe dream or is it going to be supplemental income, or is it just going to, like, how do you envision the economy unfolding from the consumer's eyes?
So there's a couple of things there, right? Like you need to build a sustainable economy, right? Like now, I don't believe that we've seen that yet inside play to earn games. So we've had a couple of games that have had decent traction, 1 million plus users, and you see a huge inflation of assets within their economy. And after a while, there's not enough consumers on one end, there's not enough gamers coming in to supplement the amount of inflation of these assets. So what happens is the assets start being devalued over time, and then you slowly get to this point where the time isn't worth the effort, and then you have this massive drop off where everyone's starting to go, okay, now I'm not going to play anymore. Then you have this massive sell off. So you get this up and then you get this massive down, right? And so the idea is that, and the reason is every single person that was playing those games, or 99.9% of the people that were playing those games, was not because they were having fun. It was because they wanted to extract value out of the economy. So we believe in order to fix that, you need to have a fun game where people are willing to play it without earning any money, without being able to, sell assets. If you just had a game that was to compete with traditional mainstream games where fun is the only value that you can get out of it, you need to be able to stand up, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is you need to have different mechanisms inside of your tokenomics to allow those assets to appreciate, not depreciate over time. And so we've got a few different mechanisms. One of them is seasons. So for instance, in our overworld, you're only able to capture those 200 creatures over a 12-month period. Now, at the end of that 12 months, you'll never be able to capture them again. And why that matters in our case is in the arena, it's highly strategic, right? So you need different characters to create a powerful composite in terms of your actual team that you bring in to beat people in player versus player. And if you, say, come into the ecosystem in the second or third year, we're already into our set 3 at that point, and you might need an alluvial, our creatures, from set 1. And you think, okay, how am I going to do that? Some guy or some girl 2 years ago caught that asset that you need, and the only way that you can get it is by buying it from them on the marketplace. So that's just one of many, many different tokenomic things that we've put in place to ensure that the economy is sustainable over time, and more importantly, our assets appreciate over time.
That's really smart. Are you guys the only ones that are kind of doing this in the gaming space? Or is blockchain gaming as a sector really growing, and we should be, expecting a huge wave of new fun and profitable games in the next few years? Where are we at as far in terms of an industry?
Yeah, definitely not, right? Like it's early days, but at the same time, I'm a huge believer in this space. Outside of my role in Alluvium, a hobby of mine is investing. I'm a big fan of angel investing. Eventually, we'll turn that into a VC and go from there. But I've made probably 75 to 85 solely gaming investments in the past 2 years. And not every single one of them is going to make it, obviously. But there will be, I would say, 4 or 5 out of that group. And, I haven't invested in everything. So it's definitely building. But the thing about building games that people don't realize is it's not like a DeFi protocol where you can build it in 6 months and then create a V1 and then have V2, V3, V4, and, keep on expanding it out like that. That base game might take you 3 years, and then yes, you can put an expansion on top of it, but that's probably going to take you another 1.5 or 2 years to get that expansion. So it's just a much longer build cycle than your typical crypto project.
How do you choose what games to invest in or take a pass on when, like you said, the game's years out from even being ready to play?
Teams. You gotta invest in the team, right? Like that's one of the only pieces of the puzzle that I focus on, because it's so important to look at, okay, what's their previous track record? Where have these guys worked before? How many of them are there? That's another big thing, because it's very, very hard to build a game. At one point, we had something like 220 people in our studio, which we built up over a 12-month period. And, we had a lot of competitors that were sitting there as well saying, oh, we also have 150 plus 200. And we're super transparent with our team, with our build, with our, we leak almost everything as we're building because we're a DAO. And I look for those red flags where people say, we've got a huge team or we've got a really skilled team. And then you look into it and it's like, oh, actually, you're outsourcing to this Web2 studio who is going to be charging you 3 times as much. They're going to, they don't have the care factor there. They're not earning any tokens from it or anything like that. And so it's going that will, maybe it does get built, but it's probably going to take, 2 or 3 years longer than what they're saying. So I just hone in on that one thing, the team, and then ensure that they have enough runway and funding. And if those 2 things fall into place, I usually, give it a shot.
And do you ever look at them as complementary to Alluvium? Like, do you ever invest in things thinking like, oh man, we could integrate this technology, or this could be a sub universe or something of what you guys are building? Yeah,
so I've obviously, from an infrastructure standpoint, I've invested in quite a few things. Like there's an NFT shorting platform that I've invested in. There's a
you say NFT shorting?
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's called Dive, and that's coming out. They're doing the public sale pretty soon. I think they're just wrapping up their seed sale now. Cool. It's run by a really smart dude who came to me and he said, and like that concept just makes sense, right? Like there's so many NFT collections that have just gone from a huge valuation where you think, well, that's not sustainable. Like it's a penguin or it's it's some kind of crazy animal that does nothing. It has no utility or whatever. And so it makes sense that it's potentially going to go down. So that's things like that. And I mean, NFT shorting platform, probably not the best thing to mention first, but there's other infrastructure like wallets and different chains and L2 solutions and things like that can definitely complement what we're building. In terms of other games, I do invest in other games, but not so much to integrate with Alluvium. It's more, and the reason is that interoperability, to do it inside of our own universe is already ridiculously hard. And if we can pull that off, that will be seen by gamers in mainstream. If that seamless ability to move your characters all the way through, let's say we build a Mario Kart style game and you can take your Atlas NFT and then just go to the racetrack and you start racing around against your friends, that experience will be mind-blowing for a traditional gamer. It's not easy to do that, but it's easier than us integrating with, say, 10 other games in the space that have different standards, that are on different blockchains. It just makes it another level of complicated, and we just don't think it's needed right now.
Yeah, some of the people ask me, they go, Bryce, we're pretty excited about NFTs and Metaverse, but what's the crossover between the two? And the analogy that I kind of had was like a Metaverse is like a house and NFTs are like the bricks that build the house. Do you guys have NFTs in your platform? Is that like how you guys think of it? Like Alluvium is a Metaverse and NFTs are like little building blocks within that Metaverse?
Yeah, so we think that if you want to call it the Metaverse is the thing that encapsulates all of these projects that have digital assets, right? NFTs across the board, right? From things in like the sandbox, from a digital collection of sound, of video, all of this stuff lives inside of the metaverse. We have a universe inside of that metaverse, right? Like, so now our universe is filled with NFTs. So we have collectibles across the board. So our fuel system is NFTs. is a currency. Our all our characters, from the actual alluvials themselves, the armor that they wear, the weapons that they have, the skins that they have, is all NFTs. And that lives inside of our universe. And that's the whole idea, is if we go and build another house over here, you can take the same building block and go and fit it into that house, and it will be activated.
That's really cool. How did you guys go around choosing which blockchain to build on top of?
We did a lot of research early on, where we were never going to go away from Ethereum. We think that users' security is paramount. They've got the most amount of validators on Ethereum. There's the most amount of developers. It's just the most robust blockchain for us by a large sum, and so we didn't want to go off Ethereum, but we knew that we couldn't use Ethereum, right? Like the transaction throughput was just not there. So we decided to start looking at layer 2 solutions. And this was back like 2 years ago, when things were very, very early days. And we had a bunch that we looked at, but Immutable was the front runner. And the reason is they don't, you still get that security from being on top of the ETH blockchain, but you also get zero gas fees, you get sub-second transaction times, and they'd also ran with they'd also built Gods Unchained prior, which was a very, very popular Web3 game. Had its issues. It's still going on now, but it's a TCG that competes with Hearthstone. But so they all of the pain points that they had from building on top of Ethereum and then eventually their own platform, they got over those hurdles. And on top of that, they're based in Sydney. So for us to be able to go and access these guys in the same time zone, it just made sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And now I want to go back to something that you had mentioned. You said that you were a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. I just wanted to kind of unpack that a little bit. What does that mean for how the game gets developed relative to how a normal web studio or game studio would develop a game?
So it's pretty interesting. It's basically a system where we came out with a solid roadmap and white paper and said, this is what we want to build. And you get a whole bunch of people that then invest in that vision and that project on the basis that they're going to go out and build what's said in the white paper. Then anything outside of that we call improvements, whether they be configuration changes to things like our staking, any of our contracts, stuff that's blockchain related, maybe our fee structure is one thing, and we call them configuration change proposals. And then there's straight up improvement proposals, which is a very wide definition for anything that a community member or ILV holder believes will make the ecosystem better. And that can come from the blockchain side of it, that can come from the finance side of it, that can come from the games themselves, the addition of characters, the balancing in the game. All of these different things can be proposed by a token holder. And if the council is made up of 5 different individuals at any given time, and they're voted in by those token holders. If the council votes yes on any of these proposals, then we as the developers need to then go out and implement whatever that improvement proposal is. So it seems a little bit cumbersome and like how it's going to get in the way of you being able to build out the game or whatever. But for us, we've had a pretty fluid experience for the most part.
With the, I guess, hellstorm of nonsense coming out of the US regulator talking about literally anything but Bitcoin being a security, does this affect the blockchain gaming space at all, since these items are getting tokenized and being put on chain, versus if they weren't and just living in their Web 2 space, there'd be no conversation about this whatsoever? Is there any concern coming from you, or is it being based in Australia? Whatever they do in America, it just really doesn't matter.
Not so much, right? So the whole idea is to be truly decentralized. So we're always working towards this model where there is no one particular jurisdiction that can actually regulate what this is, because it's essentially a whole bunch of people, in our case 130 people distributed across 35 different countries in the world. There's no way that you can enforce any sort of regulation on this on this entity or this organization or whatever you want to call it, because and we need to move to that stage. And we're getting similar heat in Australia at the moment, where we've been trying to work very, very closely with the legislators over here to say, hey, what are we? Can you define what a DAO is? And it's just not happening, right? Like it's just been a thing that's been said for the last 3 years now that, hey, we're going to work it out, we're going to pass something, then the government changes, it all goes back to square one, and then we're here again, and we're like, we're trying to work with you guys. It's not like we want to break any rules or anything like that. But at the end of the day, it's a very complex system when you have this entity that is sort of floating in the air. And if one jurisdiction says, hey, we're not going to allow you to run anymore, we're going to come and seize your computers or whatever it might be. We've got 6 people in America, right? Like out of 150 people, that's not going to do it. If you do it in Australia, we've got, 7 or 8 people in Australia, right? So you might cut off, let's call it an octopus, and you're cutting off one of these tentacles, but it will grow back in a different jurisdiction. And so it's very, very hard to regulate something like that. However, there are different jurisdictions that are popping up where we're looking into where they have recognized what a DAO is, and they're saying, we want to somehow govern this and protect its users and whatever. So I don't know. It's a little bit a new concept.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough call. But I think we should, we could go ahead and we could switch gears. I'm curious just about your opinion as well on DeFi. I know you're pretty plugged in on DeFi. I think your brother's with Kane, right? That's your brother, or you just fortuitous last name?
Yeah, no, we're brothers. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. So it's like your parents have 2 sons who both have like billion-dollar protocols in the crypto space, which is pretty cool. Also, it kind of reminds me of
actually
like the Emmanuel brothers. It's like one brother was like a doctor, one was the guy who wrote Obamacare, one guy was the head of CAA, and they're all brothers. They all grew up probably going around the dinner table talking.
There's actually 4 of us. So there's there's 3 in Alluvium. So we're all 3 brothers are the co-founders of Alluvium. One of them does the art, one of them does the game design, and I do more the business operations and stuff like that. And Kane's in his own protocol, but he was our first investor. in Alluvium. So it's it's a weird story.
What do you think some of the next, kind of big trends of DeFi are going to be? Like we had the yield farming craze and that kind of stuff. Really, Synthetics was one of the early adopters of like liquidity mining and incentivizing people to provide liquidity and earn Synthetics tokens. Are you kind of seeing any new big trend coming out that might generate a lot of hype?
I think derivatives are going to be a big new narrative. Derivatives, particularly on layer 2 solutions. I think that was one of the biggest friction points for DeFi protocols back in the summer is you would get these huge yields, which, maybe they're sustainable, maybe they're not. But when you're talking about trying to claim these yields, I remember some transactions were costing me like $700 in gas to be able to claim these rewards from some of these protocols. It's not really sustainable. So I think if the bull market comes back and we can start using these trading protocols and they're done on all the different layer 2 solutions and that are coming out, and even some of the other alt chains that have pretty seamless experiences now, I think we're going to see another huge run in that space.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what Coinbase's new layer 2 thing that they built, how that kind of rolls out if people are actually interested in throwing liquidity over there. Do you have any hot takes on it, or?
Look, I think it's I definitely think that it's the future, right? Like it's a big win for ETH, and I think it shows again that they're not willing to compromise their users' security. It's they don't want to choose a chain that can potentially go down or whatever. I think Solana just yesterday,
it was just down again the other day.
The 18-hour outage because their validators need
it's bad over there.
Coordinate on Discord or something like that. Like that kind of stuff is pretty crazy to me. So I think they're making the right call, but I think as well they're trying to, if we're going to get to that mainstream adoption. And you come across, like I remember it was when I came back to the space in 2020, and even like it seems crazy now, which is insane. If a transaction was costing you like $60, right? Like imagine going into the bank and saying, I want to transfer money from my savings account to my checking account, and they're like, that's going to cost you $66, and if you want to do it a little bit faster, we'll charge you $98. And it's like, what?
Yeah, it'd be horrible.
That's not really a good UX, right? Like that sort of experience is kind of crazy. But so I think everyone is that the layer 2 narrative will be the next bull run, and I think we saw a little bit of it. But those layer 2 solutions are getting a lot faster now. The onboarding process is a lot better. The ability to port back to layer 1 is becoming faster. So I think that is going to be the new narrative on top of these different trading platforms. But what Coinbase is doing, they've got millions of users. It's certainly bullish for the space.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited. There's some of these bridges that are out there that I think are pretty exciting because, with all these new chains coming out and layer 2s and stuff, you're going to need to have liquidity to be able to facilitate, quickly across. So, ones that I've been researching a lot are Synapse and Stargate.
Yeah.
And those are two really, I've got exposure over there, full disclosure, but I think that they've got a really cool technical solutions. But again, also bridges have been the number one hacked sort of piece of infrastructure, at all. Like it's crazy, the Ronin hack and the wormhole hack.
Ronin was,
but actually the wormhole hack. Do you hear they just recovered? They did a little counter exploit against the wormhole hacker.
No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, Jump got the $300 million back, basically, and the way they did it was they got like some court order from like the UK, and Oasis, which is like the app, front end app on MakerDAO, basically like in their smart contract, like coded something in order to steal the funds from the hacker's wallet or from his like CDP and put it into Jump's wallet. I'm like, oh shit, like that's pretty crazy. So there's a big discussion around like, hey, is it still decentralized? What does that mean?
The decentralized maxis will be going crazy over that.
Yeah, exactly.
Let them be. They've stolen it. It's their money now.
No, I mean, it's a tough call because on one end, it's like, is it decentralized? Well, whatever. But on the other hand, it's like, I don't know. It's like a thief doesn't really deserve a platform no matter where he is. It's like, I think decentralization is really a means to an end, right? But if you have somebody who gamed the system or hacked it, like, I don't think that they necessarily are entitled to that, even if it preserves quote unquote more decentralization. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I think if we reward bad behavior, we're just going to end up with the world we have now. And Web3 is intentionally built to re-incentivize actions towards goodness, fairness. That's what the whole decentralization is about. And if you get away from the ethos of decentralization and only focus on the practice of it, you're going to miss the entire point. So that's my thoughts on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm more in the camp of build your systems better, right? Like we had a hack very early on or a compromise, which luckily we found pretty quickly, and we decided to reimburse our affected people ourselves, as in the co-founders decided to. Luckily, it was only something to the tune of like $500,000, but obviously we wouldn't have been able to do that if it was larger than that. But that's why we're adamant about security and saying build things on top of things that are fundamentally secure. The Ronin hack at the time had 4 validators, or like maybe 6 validators or something like, which, when you've got that much money flowing through a system like that, at one point had hundreds of millions of dollars that were flowing through that system, billions of trading volume.
Crazy.
You're gonna get attack vectors, especially when you've built this brand new network that is being held up by 6 people validating the network. So I don't know. I mean, these lessons are going to be learned. There's always going to be people who are looking for different attack vectors. I think in 10 years, it gets exponentially harder to be able to compromise these systems. So it's probably just a result of us being so early. But yeah, I mean, I also don't believe that people should just be able to steal money. Like that's obviously, not an ethical thing, and it's not cool. So yeah, I'm kind of ambivalent, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit of a gray area, but we're the industry's young; it's still getting sussed out and such things. But kind of from a guy who's been in the industry for a long time. And before we let you go, this is Crypto 101. We always like to ask everybody for just one word of advice, a little bit of wisdom. And I like the idea of like building on security and really like hammering that home. So maybe you have another couple of words of wisdom for new folks who are just entering the space.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise, right? Like you've got and this bear market has churned out a whole bunch of that noise, and you find, okay, who are the actual builders and who are the people that are just, hyping up vaporware and stuff like that. But you've really, the DYOR it gets used so much. And I think it has a huge importance, right? Like when you actually get immersed in this space. And again, when I first came back, I spent probably 20 hours a day. It's not easy. It's not healthy. It's not anything. Like definitely not, but that's almost what's required for you to stay on tap and sit there and learn everything about all of the different facets of crypto. Now we've got so many different market segments, and you've got Bitcoin, you've got L1s, you've got L2s, you've got NFTs now, you've got gaming. There's so many different segments. I would say hone in on one, become an expert at it, and yeah, when it comes to investing, just invest in really good teams.
Love it. All right. Well, this has been a ton of fun. And also, before we let you go, how can folks get involved in Alluvium? Is there a beta link that we could send them to? Is it just a wait and see for the next big announcement?
No. So you can go to the Alluvium website, and there you can register for the different betas. If you want to play Alluvium Zero, you need to pick yourself up a land plot. There's 20,000 of them that have been sold and are floating around. But yeah, definitely, join the Discord. That's where a lot of the action happens. And yeah, just can't wait to launch later this year.
Killer. Kieran, thank you so much for coming on to the Crypto 101 podcast. And we hope to have you back on soon whenever you guys have some more fun announcements for us.
Thanks, Bryce. Cheers, Pete's fun.
Peace.